I'm going to absolutely destroy my workspace to show you how to make a realistic Pokémon Aquarium from Polymer clay and resin. Can you spot the shiny at the end? Full disclosure, this is a commission for a school of wishy-washy. You'd think they'd be in the workforce by now, but since they don't evolve, I guess they're perpetually children. Stay in school, kids. Be like wishy-washy. Attempt 1 had me starting with the head, planning to sculpt the body separately and stick them together. That didn't happen. Instead, I found it much easier to make a mini torpedo using a base of wire and superglue. You can see the point just here where I realized sculpting both parts together was the better idea. Now I separate the head before gouging out the eye socket with a circle cutter and some silicone shaper tools before moving onto the mouth and finer details such as the eyelid. A quick brush with isopropyl alcohol and it can go into the oven to bake. Repeat that over 10 times and look at that! I got half a skull! I say half because they don't have any fins yet. Guess that means they aren't finished? To fix that, I add a little nugget of clay, flatten it, and shape it to become the dorsal fin, making sure it's blended into the main body so it doesn't fall off. I use a similar method to make the pectoral fins, except I make them much smaller and use my finger as support before baking them stiff and filing down so they're as thin and flat as possible. At the tail end, literally, I snip the tip and use translucent clay in an attempt to make the tail see-through, which totally works. You can't prove it didn't, unless you watch this video. Damn, guess I played myself. Now I repeat it all over again until I lose track of time and sanity. As if I had any to begin with. With all the Pokémon sculpted, it's time to make some plants. I could go buy them from a pet or fish store. Or I can make them by hand, and that sounds more fun. To do that, I'm going to try a new technique to create ultra-fine leaves. I mix my softest clay with clay softener until it reaches a spread consistency, close to peanut butter. Wait, what? Oh, typo in the script. Peanut butter. Then use a brush that will never be clean again to spread it out. This also adds some lovely striations that look like natural fibres. To make the grass, I cut small strips, splitting them at the ends along the fibres until I get these lovely tufts. With a nice stack made, I can go about supergluing them together into bundles, starting with the longest first and layering outwards, then filling in any gaps with spares and peeling the finished grass bundle off the glad wrap. With the grass done, I make up some more clay paper and start cutting out elongated leaf shapes. Then I make more, because I always make too few. I can't make the stalks out of clay, it's too weak. So instead I'm using copper wire I ripped out of a malfunctioning Dremel. Twisting them together forms the central stalk that I can add to as I work my way down until I get the length I want and seal it with more super glue. With all the elements made, it's time to build the frame. I sealed it as tightly as possible with multiple sticks of hot glue. This definitely works and will not bite me in the arse later. You can tell I'm a professional here because I immediately make a bad decision and fix it in a panic. Fun fact, the base was actually made first. The client wanted specific dimensions, so I had to figure out how large the different elements would be. You've technically been watching this in reverse, and as we all know...
You are technically correct. The best kind of correct.
Smushing on what's effectively papier-mâché in a chaotic mess gives me an interesting floor, as well as ruin all of my clothes. I am not a clean person. This stuff got everywhere. Totally worth it though. Some random sticks, pebbles, bits and bobs from outside get stuck into the wet base before dousing the entire thing in multiple layers of browns. Darker tones go into the divots, and lastly, some ripped up cork for smaller stones. With the most boring colours done, it's time for vegetation. Starting with a base green, I make sure to get all of the nooks and crannies before using a dry brush to tickle the tips with a lighter yellowish green. Drowning it in a dark brown wash tones it down before being glued in place, plus a few other additions. The same basic process is repeated for the kelp, except I'm using a darker olive green to try emulate real kelp. I can dust it with a lighter shade and throw on a wash before gluing it in place. The bond is pretty weak, but it only needs to hold long enough for the resin to set. A little yellow paint on the top was meant to show the direction of the sun, but I'm not sure it worked, and that's the base done. I could make a joke here about painting the head white, but I'm pretty sure if I make it more blatant than that, I'm gonna get flagged by YouTube. But seriously, I apply multiple layers of white until it's opaque, then sketch the patterns on either side of the body and fill them in. Badly. But that's alright, because I can come in with blue and fix any uneven edges. Repeat painting over white with blue and blue with white until I'm satisfied with the final look. Then repeat the exact same process with the grey on the underside. The eyelids get a matching blue coat before it dries out, and then I can add the final detailing on the white patterns. That is the tiny, extremely thin black outline that was the bane of my existence. I literally had to go out and get new ultra-fine brushes to make this work. But once it does, I can add some minor shading and details to the fins and underside, then apply highlights in select areas over the blue, and finally finish the fish. Having nearly lost sight of the end, it made sense to get to work on the eyes next. Sketching out a cross gives me a framework, which I can use to paint the water blob-like iris with blue, before applying a little sparkle and finishing up with the mouth. Now, I use cosclay, which is super flexible, and since there's wire inside, I can just bend the fish into whatever position I want before setting them in place. Once everything's positioned, I weigh out more resin than I have ever used in a project before, and tint it blue and green until I get a kind of murky river water looking colour. This definitely didn't change colour later on. Then it was just a case of pouring and praying. Unfortunately, I am not a religious person. After that colossal mess up, I managed to cure just enough of the bottom layer to form a new seal, preventing the rest of the resin from leaking. Just in case though, I did use a piece of baking paper to protect what was left of my desk. Once fully cured, I can use my non-existent brute strength to remove the mold. Only one wall came off cleanly. The rest I needed tools for. For the finishing touches, Vallejo water effects will give some really nice waves and ripples. It looks like I've just ruined the whole thing, but once dry, it creates an awesome clear water. The ripples get built up wherever the wishy-washy reach the surface. Then I can add in the waves before finally finishing it off with a sprinkle of these really neat tiny autumn leaves that I have. Then, we're done! Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. For those of you returning, thank you for being patient with this video, and if you haven't already, feel free to like, comment, or sub. All three go a really long way in the YouTube algorithm. I'll see you next time!